The slow rhythm of a summer noon, 1956. Midday in the summer of 1956 did not arrive quietly. The sky glowed like a sheet of polished glass, and the air carried a weight that pressed gently on every roof, every fence, every porch swing. Heat shimmered above the pavement, making the far end of the street blur as if it were a painting not yet dry. Cicadas droned with the persistence of a clock, their rhythm filling the gaps between breaths. Children claimed the streets as their own. Tires hummed against the pavement, spokes glittered, and handlebars gleamed with sunlight. A pair of boys leaned into their pedals, shouting challenges no one would remember by evening. A girl coasted behind them, balancing her cone of coins in one hand, determined to reach the ice cream shop before they were gone. Their laughter trailed like ribbons through the thick afternoon air. The ice cream parlor was a refuge. Its doorbell chimed each time the children burst in, leaving behind the weight of the sun for the cool embrace of polished counters and humming fans. Behind the glass case, neat rows of tubs promised sweet relief. Vanilla, strawberry, chocolate ripple, each scoop lifted with a practiced twist, dropped onto a cone, and handed over with a smile. Outside again, the heat reclaimed the cones at once, sending drips racing down wrists and staining shirts with sticky trails. Nobody minded. It was part of summer's bargain. On the shaded porch of a white clapboard house, a father sat with his paper folded loosely across his lap. His shirt collar was open, his hat tipped back. A wooden fan swayed lazily in his hand. Beside him, a radio murmured the soundtrack of the season, a live baseball game, the announcer's voice sharp and clear, punctuated by the roar of unseen crowds. Between pitches, the only sound was the creak of the porch swing moving back and forth. The town itself moved slowly, as though wrapped in a drowsy haze. A dog sprawled across the cool dust beneath a wagon. A shopkeeper leaned in his doorway, wiping his brow with a handkerchief. Somewhere, a hammer tapped steadily against wood, then paused as if even nails needed rest in the heat. The smell of hot tar from the road crew mingled with the sweetness drifting from the parlor, blending into a fragrance that belonged only to summer. Then came the moment that lifted the whole street. The announcer's voice sharpened, a long pitch, a swing. Silence, then an eruption of cheers over the radio. A home run. The father's face broke into a grin. He tapped his paper against his knee, laughing softly. Across the way, a boy paused mid-lick, his cone dripping faster now, and let out a cheer of his own. For an instant, the entire block seemed bound together by the crack of a bat that none of them had actually seen. By early afternoon, the ice cream was gone, the coins spent, and the bicycles once more glided through the heat. Chains clicked. Tires squealed against loose gravel. Shadows lay short and sharp across the pavement. The children's voices faded as they disappeared down another street, leaving only the steady buzz of insects and the low hum of the radio still working through its innings. The father leaned back, eyes half closed, letting the announcer's words paint a diamond of grass and dirt far beyond the porch. He could feel the house breathing slowly behind him, its windows open to the faintest breeze, curtains stirring like someone sighing in sleep. It was nothing unusual, just a summer noon in 1956, with cones melting too quickly, bicycles squeaking in the heat, and a ball game carried across the airwaves. No photograph captured it, no diary marked it down. Yet it lingered, a memory woven from sunlight, sugar, and sound, a moment so ordinary that it became eternal. The bell above the parlor door gave a tired little ring, as though it had already welcomed too many visitors that day. Yet for the children, that sound was a signal of salvation. They tumbled inside, pushing the heavy door closed behind them, trading the weight of the sun for a rush of cool air touched with sugar. The room smelled of waffle cones and chocolate syrup. Fans mounted high on the walls spun lazily, stirring the air just enough to lift the edge of a paper napkin. Behind the long glass case stretched neat rows of frozen colors, each tub carved into soft valleys by the scoops of the morning. Vanilla was tallest, chocolate had already been dug into deeply, and the strawberry carried flecks of real fruit that shone like jewels in the frost. The children pressed close to the glass, their foreheads leaving little fog marks. Fingers smudged the surface as they pointed, deciding and undeciding, each cone seeming more tempting than the last. Their nickels, warm from clenched fists, clinked nervously against the counter. For them, the choice was a ceremony: 2 scoops or 1, cone or dish, rainbow sprinkles if there was a coin to spare. The soda jerk moved with an ease that came from years of repetition. His white cap sat slightly crooked, his sleeves rolled to the elbows. With each practiced motion, the scoop cut clean into the ice cream, turned, and rose with a perfect round. Cones lined up on the counter like trophies, each handed off with a smile and a quick reminder: eat fast out there, it won't wait for you. Outside, the heat claimed the cones instantly. Rivers of color ran down small wrists, dripping onto sidewalks that hissed softly as the sugar met the stone. The children laughed, racing against the melt, tongues darting at the edges. One boy tilted his cone too far and lost the top scoop to gravity. It hit the ground with a splat that left him staring in disbelief, until the others burst out laughing, and then he laughed too, the disappointment vanishing as quickly as the ice cream itself. The street outside the parlor became a stage. Bicycles leaned against lampposts, their metal frames hot to the touch. Dogs sniffed at fallen drips. A little girl sat on the curb, her shoes untied, carefully licking the last of her cone down to the point where it could no longer hold its shape. She looked as though she had discovered a secret treasure no one else could see. Inside the shop, the bell rang again and again. A steady stream of children and the occasional adult came and went. A farmer with dust on his boots ordered a root beer float and drank it in 3 long pulls. 2 teenage girls shared a banana split, each taking small bites with silver spoons, their laughter spilling through the room like music. The shopkeeper wiped the counter, filled another cone, and gave the bell another reason to sing. By noon, the parlor had become the center of the street's rhythm. The baseball game played faintly from a radio near the soda fountain, its commentary mixing with the clink of glass and the scrape of scoops. Every cheer from the announcer seemed to ripple through the customers, making them pause, smile, or nod, as though the whole town was gathered in spirit inside that one small shop. And still the cones kept leaving the counter, vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, melting into the day. For the children, it was not just ice cream. It was proof that summer belonged to them, that even in the heaviest heat, there was sweetness waiting if you knew where to look. On the wide wooden porch, shaded by the roof's long overhang, the father sat in a chair that had known many summers before this one. Its slats creaked faintly as he leaned back, the motion slow, deliberate, unhurried. A folded newspaper rested across his knees, the ink smudged faintly onto his fingertips. Every so often he lifted the paper, scanning headlines, but more often it served as a shield from the glare of the sun. Beside him, a small portable radio balanced on the railing, its silver dial catching the light. The voice that drifted from it was strong, carrying across the yard as though the announcer stood just a few feet away. "Bottom of the 5th, 2 strikes," the voice declared, crisp and clear. Then came the sound of the crowd, rising and falling like the tide, thousands of unseen voices cheering in unison. The father's hand moved with quiet rhythm, fanning himself with the folded paper. Each sweep stirred the warm air, blending the scents of cut grass and dust from the road. Occasionally, he took off his hat, wiped his brow with a handkerchief, then set the hat back firmly in place. His movements were small, but they carried the dignity of routine. From the street came the sounds of summer, the squeak of a bicycle chain, the laughter of children chasing drips of melting ice cream, the bark of a dog too lazy to stand. All of it wove together with the voice on the radio until the porch felt like the center of a much larger world. The game was far away, yet its energy pulsed here, on this quiet street, where the father listened with the focus of someone who understood that small joys deserved attention. The announcer's tone sharpened, signaling a swing, and then the sudden roar of the crowd poured through the speaker. A home run. The father straightened, his eyes lighting up as he tapped his knee with the folded paper. A smile tugged at his face, brief but genuine, before he settled back again into the chair. He did not shout, but his quiet cheer matched the roar of thousands. For a moment, even the children on the street seemed to sense it. Their laughter faltered as they paused to listen, cones in hand, before erupting again into their own noisy celebration. It was as if the whole neighborhood had taken a breath together, joined by a game that none of them could see, but all could feel. The father leaned further back, the porch glider moving gently under his weight. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the hum of cicadas and the murmur of the radio overlap, each sound a note in the slow song of summer. His hat slipped forward, shading his face. The world beyond the yard pressed on, hot and wide, but here on the porch, he held a piece of stillness, broken only by the voice of a game that reminded him life was steady, familiar, and whole. The town held the sun like a bowl holds water, every street filled to its rim with light and stillness. The pavement shimmered in waves, so bright it hurt to look too long. Even the shadows seemed weary, lying flat and thin under porches, trees, and shop awnings. Noon had settled in, and everything bent to its weight. At the gas station, the doors to the service bay stood wide open. A car rested inside, its hood raised, but no one rushed to work. The mechanic leaned against the doorway, a rag slung over his shoulder, his face shining with sweat. He sipped from a glass bottle of cola, condensation dripping down his wrist, while the radio on his workbench carried the same baseball game echoing across town. Down the street, the barber shop's blinds were half drawn to block the glare. Inside, Carmine, the barber, moved slowly, his scissors clicking in a steady rhythm. The whirr of a ceiling fan overhead stirred the air just enough to keep hair clippings from clinging to the skin. A customer dozed lightly in the chair, lulled by the heat and the familiar sound of the scissors, while two old men on the bench by the wall argued quietly about batting averages. The hardware store stood with its door propped open, the faint scent of wood shavings and paint drifting out into the street. A small American flag, hung in the window years before, swayed slightly with each stir of air. Across the way, the drugstore displayed jars of candy in the front case, their colors dulled by the sun pressing through the glass. A young clerk leaned against the counter, fanning himself with a folded magazine, waiting for the slow trickle of customers that came with the afternoon. On the sidewalks, children's bicycles leaned in untidy clusters, frames hot enough to burn bare legs. A stray dog circled near the bakery, drawn by the scent of loaves cooling in the open window. The smell mingled with the sweetness from the ice cream parlor, drifting down the block like a promise. Every so often, the bakery door swung open, releasing another burst of warm air and a chorus of bells that jingled softly before fading into the heat. The church bell rang once at 1 o'clock, its sound sharp and clear, echoing longer than usual through the quiet streets. Few people paused to notice, but the note carried, bouncing off walls and slipping into open windows. In a way, It felt like the town's own reminder to breathe, to hold steady against the sun. Everywhere, the pace slowed. A farmer in overalls walked down the road with his hat pulled low, his boots leaving slow prints in the dust. Two teenagers sat on the steps of the movie theater, sharing a single bottle of soda, passing it back and forth as they stared at the poster for the next double feature. They did not speak much. The silence between them was enough. The town in the heat was not asleep, but it was caught in a rhythm that belonged only to summer. Each sound, the click of scissors, the jingle of a doorbell, the faint roar of a baseball crowd carried through a radio, became part of a larger song. The song was slow, steady, and ordinary. Yet in its quietness, it held the whole heart of a summer day. By mid-afternoon, the town had surrendered fully to the sun. The cicadas sang louder, as though they were the only ones with energy left. Shadows stretched thin along the sidewalks, and the air shimmered with heat that seemed to rise from the very ground. Children had vanished indoors for naps or chores, leaving behind bicycles tipped against fences and sticky wrappers that clung to the curb. The laughter that had filled the street an hour before lingered only in echoes, as if the air itself remembered the sound. A lone cone, dropped and forgotten, melted into a pink stain on the pavement. On the porch, the father leaned back in his chair. The radio had fallen quiet, the ball game finished for the day. He did not turn it off, letting it hum softly with static, a companion more than a machine. His eyes drifted shut beneath the brim of his hat, the folded newspaper still resting across his lap. The swing beneath him moved gently, creaking now and then, carrying him toward a half-sleep that belonged only to summer afternoons. The town exhaled. The barber lowered his blinds further. The mechanic closed the service bay and hung his rag on a hook. At the drugstore, the clerk finally set down the magazine, letting the silence claim the counter. The church bell did not ring again. It had said enough. Nothing remarkable had happened. There was no parade, no crisis, no headline to remember. Yet something lingered. The sweetness of ice cream melting faster than it could be eaten. The cheer of a crowd carried across miles of airwaves. The creak of a porch swing under the weight of a man who had learned to love stillness. These small things stitched themselves together into memory, quiet but unshakable. Years later, someone would remember this noon. Perhaps the taste of strawberry ice cream would bring it back. Perhaps the sound of a baseball announcer's voice on the radio would open the door. Perhaps only the sight of sunlight trembling on hot pavement would be enough. And with that, the ordinary hour would return, alive again, proving that even the most common of days can outlast the years. It was only a summer noon in 1956, but in its ordinary rhythm, it became something more. It became a piece of time that never truly left.